The fluorescent lights hummed their lonely midnight song as Catherine Chen slumped in her leather chair, eyes burning from another 18-hour day. Outside her corner office, the glittering skyline of Manhattan mocked her with its promise of success, a promise that now felt like a cruel joke. Her company, TechVision Solutions, was bleeding money, and she had exactly 30 days to find a miracle or watch everything she'd built over 15 years crumble into bankruptcy. She'd fired half her staff last month, watched her VP of operations walk out with their biggest client, and now sat alone in an empty building, wondering where it all went wrong. But what happened in the next hour would change everything she thought she knew about success, loyalty, and the invisible people who keep the world running. Catherine heard the familiar squeak of wheels against marble, Miguel's cleaning cart making its nightly rounds. For 3 years, the elderly janitor had been a fixture in her building, arriving at 11 p.m. sharp when everyone else had gone home. She'd passed him countless times, offered the occasional tired smile, maybe a good evening, when she remembered. But had she ever really seen him? Tonight, exhausted and desperate for answers, she made an impulsive decision. She would pretend to be asleep. She wanted to see what people did when they thought no one was watching. Maybe it would tell her something about the culture she'd created, about whether anyone truly cared about this company anymore. She arranged herself carefully in her chair, head tilted against the high back, breathing slow and steady. Through barely open lids, she watched Miguel's stooped figure appear in her doorway. He paused, cleaning supplies in hand, studying her with concern. Instead of proceeding with his usual routine, he set down his cart with extraordinary care, making no sound. He retrieved a soft blanket from somewhere, his own cart, she realized, and draped it gently over her shoulders. The tenderness of the gesture made her throat tighten. But Miguel didn't leave. He settled into the chair across from her desk, pulled out a worn notebook, and began reading through papers scattered across her workspace. Catherine's heart jumped. Was he stealing company secrets? Going through confidential files? She forced herself to remain still, though every instinct screamed to sit up and confront him. Then she heard the soft scratch of pencil on paper. Miguel was writing. For 20 minutes, he studied her documents, financial reports, client proposals, operational breakdowns. The papers she'd been drowning in for weeks, unable to see a way forward. Finally, he stood, placed his notebook on her desk, adjusted the blanket around her shoulders once more, and quietly left to continue his cleaning rounds. The moment his cart squeaked down the hallway, Catherine sat bolt upright, heart hammering. She grabbed the notebook with shaking hands, afraid of what she might find. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, some in English, some in Spanish, with numbers and diagrams covering every margin. But it was the note on top that stopped her cold. Ms. Chen, I hope you don't mind. I see you here so late, so worried. I used to own manufacturing business in Colombia before I come to America. We have same problems you have now. I think maybe I can help. Please, if you want, we can talk. Miguel Reyes. Beneath the note were pages of detailed analysis. He'd identified the exact bottlenecks in their production process that were hemorrhaging money. He'd spotted the redundancies in their supply chain that she'd been too close to see. He'd even drafted a proposal for restructuring their client services that would cut costs by 30% while improving response time. The solutions were brilliant, elegant, and so obvious now that someone had pointed them out. How had she missed all of this? Catherine ran into the hallway, still clutching the notebook. Miguel, wait. The elderly janitor turned, surprise flickering across his weathered face. His cleaning cart stood between them like a barrier of unspoken class divisions. She saw him clearly for the first time, the intelligence in his dark eyes, the quiet dignity in his bearing, the calluses on his hands from years of hard work that had nothing to do with his education or capabilities. You owned a business. Her voice came out breathless. In Colombia. Miguel nodded slowly. Yes, Ms. Chen. 23 years, we made automotive parts. 150 employees. But economy crash, corruption make business impossible. I lose everything. Come here for better life for my family, but my English not so good, my credentials not transfer. So I clean. He gestured at his cart without shame. Honest work. I am grateful for it. But at night, when I clean offices, I see problems. I see solutions. Old habits, you know. Catherine's eyes burned with tears she hadn't let herself shed through months of crisis. These solutions. Miguel, this is exactly what we need. How did you? I watch, I listen, he said simply. Nobody sees the janitor. People talk on phones, leave papers out, have meetings with doors open. Not on purpose, they just forget I'm there. For 3 years, I see this company, I see your heart in it. You work harder than anyone. You care about people, I see how you cry when you have to do layoffs. But Ms. Chen, you're surrounded by wrong people. People who think they better than others, who don't listen to ideas from below. You build walls without knowing. The truth of his words hit her like a physical blow. She'd been so focused on credentialing, on fancy degrees and prestigious backgrounds, that she'd stopped seeing people. She'd created a hierarchy that valued pedigree over insight, titles over talent. And it had nearly destroyed everything. Will you help me? She asked. Please. Not as my janitor, as my consultant. Partner. Whatever title you want. Miguel smiled, a lifetime of dignity shining through. I help you because it's right thing to do. Because you have good heart, even when you don't see clearly. You remind me of myself, before I lose my way. They worked through the night, Catherine and Miguel, CEO and janitor, two people stripped of their titles and united by purpose. He showed her how to restructure operations, how to rebuild trust with clients through transparency instead of desperate promises, how to identify the real innovators among her remaining staff regardless of their position on the org chart. He introduced her to his network, other immigrants working, invisible, jobs who had been doctors, engineers, executives in their home countries. Suddenly, she had access to a brain trust of experienced professionals that no recruitment agency could have matched. Within 6 weeks, TechVision's bleeding stopped. Within 3 months, they were profitable again. Miguel became her chief operations officer. She insisted on the title, though he laughed and said it wouldn't change who he was. But it changed everything else. She instituted a policy where every executive spent 1 day a month working alongside facilities staff, learning to see the company from the ground up. She created pathways for employees to share ideas regardless of department or seniority. She hired translators to help foreign-born workers whose credentials hadn't transferred, unlocking talent that had been scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans. The story spread, the CEO who learned wisdom from her janitor, who saved her company by pretending to sleep and waking up to what really mattered. Media called it a feel-good story. Catherine called it the most humbling lesson of her life. A year later, standing before her fully staffed company at their annual meeting, Catherine spotted Miguel in the crowd, now wearing a suit but still carrying the same quiet dignity. Success isn't about who has the fanciest degree or the biggest title, she told her team. It's about whether we're humble enough to learn from anyone, wise enough to see value in everyone, and brave enough to admit when we've been blind. The person who saved this company was here all along. We just had to open our eyes. Sometimes the answers we desperately seek are pushing a cleaning cart right past us, waiting for someone to finally look up and see not a janitor or a title, but a human being with a lifetime of wisdom to share. All it takes is the humility to stop pretending we have all the answers and the courage to recognize brilliance in unexpected places. That's not just good business. That's humanity at its finest.